I am so excited to welcome you to the Brooks Portal, and my name is Admire. Now, there is a Bible story in 1 Samuel chapter 4, verse 15 to 22. And this is our inspirational scripture in this episode as we're talking about religion in the United Kingdom. And that was the time when Eli, who was a high priest, was judging Israel. And he did that for 40 years. He was a heavy-set man who fell from his seat backwards, and eventually he died. Now, Eli was 80 years old, and his eyes were dim, and that he could not see. And there was a man who came unto him, and he said, I have come out of the army, and I've fled out. Eli said, now, what is there? Or what has happened, my son? And the messenger answered and said, Israel is fled from the Philistines. And there had been also a great slaughter among the people, and that his two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were dead, and the ark of the God was taken as well. Now it came to pass, when he had mentioned of the ark of God, that he fell off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake, and then he died. For he was an old man and heavy, and he had judged Israel for 40 years. And his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was pregnant and near to be delivered. And when she had the news that the ark of God was taken, and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and travailed. And about the time of her death, the woman that stood by her said unto her, Fear not, for thou hast borne a son. But she answered not, neither did she regard it. And she named the child Ichabod, saying, The glory is departed from Israel, and the ark of God was taken. And because her father-in-law and her husband had died. And she said, The glory is departed from Israel, and the ark of the God is taken. Now the ark of God, it was a wooden box that was overlaid with gold and had the table stones with the 10 commandments and the mercy seat on top of it. So it was central to worship then, and in an antitype, it's central to our worship too. But that can be a subject for another day. So when she had the ark of God was taken, oh, that was sad news. Now we can ask, what's the matter with our nation, our churches? Has the joy of the Lord departed? Is it Ichabod for Christianity in the UK? Now, Christianity, I mean the general, anyone who identifies as Christian. Now, Ichabod means the presence of the Lord has departed. Now, Ichabod happens when we leave the original Christian foundation and place ourselves into men's creeds, dogmas, and permitted things of the world to dry up the church's experience with God. And then the glory of the Lord departs. That's Ichabod. Now, has the UK been on fire for God in times past? Oh, yes. And in this episode, I've chosen to highlight a man who was born here in England, in Upworth Rectory. And that was in 1703. And that man's name was John Wesley. He was the 17th child among 19 children of Susanna and John, his father, who was a preacher, and his mother was a consecrated saint. I would say this was a good example of a family in the UK. Although they had 19 children, to take care of, Susanna, the mother of John Wesley, found much time through her busy day to teach her children Bible lessons and pray for each and every one of them. And that made their boys to be what they became. He had Charles, his brother, who became a great songwriter, who gave the world some of the most inspiring songs we have ever heard. John Wesley is a man who rose up early every morning. For 60 years, he got up every morning at 4 o'clock. I wonder, as Christians, if we have not fallen from such practices. This was a good example. So he would get up every morning at 4 o'clock and preached at 5 a.m. for 50 straight years. What a man. And sometimes he preached from 2 to 4 times a day. Some historians in England then say that he rode a horse for 4,500 English miles every year. Now, an average car can do 7,000 miles in England, but for him, he was doing that with a horse to preach the gospel. What? To preach the gospel. That's a long distance on a horseback. Just to preach the gospel. That's the man John Wesley was. Now, John Wesley was called a Methodist because he had methods of doing things. He had a method of preaching. He had a method of testifying. He had a method of doing this. And in his lifetime, he preached more than 40,000 sermons, historians say. Now, think of that. That's a staggering number. 40,000 sermons in his life. Now, what England needs is another shake-up with such caliber of preachers or believers, with a working method to turn the tide of the waning fortunes of Christianity in these islands. Now, some time ago, the Lutherans thought they had their revival under Luther, protesting scriptural excesses of the Catholics then. But when God rose up a little fellow, John Wesley, in England here, who went with a message of sanctification, they found more of God and were craving for even more of God. Now, John Wesley is a man who saw a vision of the pillar of fire, and he got a message of sanctification and called it the second work of grace. Lutherans could not go along with that because they were not taught that. But all the same, Wesley taught sanctification and caused a great revival to sweep through England. And the Wesleyan age actually saved England out of its corruption then. When there is corruption, God sends someone to shake up that system. But then it gave birth to the Methodist Church. Eventually, they came up with a document. We believe this, and that's it. Then God moved ahead with his plan and left them holding a document after Wesley's departure. Now, let a man stand out who feels the burden for the people of God. Men who lay their face and cry and pray before God. We need John Wesley outfits again here in England. Firebrands snatched from the fire. Then we'll be able to show a revival once again among the Christians. Some of the things I've said are my own personal opinion. And should you disagree with any, feel free to put it in the comment section. That way we can initiate a conversation. Or in case you agree with something, feel free to reinforce it in the comment section below. Now, what do you think with this decline of Christianity in the UK? Do something. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe, like, and share. Until then, may God richly bless you.